My name is Margaret, and I'm 72 years old. I've lived my entire life on our family ranch in Montana, where the mountains touch the sky and the wind carries stories of 4 generations of hard work. But on that cold February morning, as snow covered the pastures where my late husband and I raised cattle for 45 years, my world crumbled with 5 simple words from my own son. I already sold it, Mom. David stood in my kitchen, his expensive suit looking out of place among the worn wooden cabinets and checkered tablecloth. At 48, he had become everything his father and I never were: cold, calculating, and obsessed with money. His designer shoes clicked against the old linoleum as he paced, avoiding my eyes. "What do you mean you sold it?" My coffee mug slipped from my trembling hands, crashing to the floor. The hot liquid splashed across my slippers, but I barely felt it. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. "The ranch, Mom. Pine Valley Ranch. I sold it to a development company. They're going to build a shopping mall here." His voice was flat, emotionless, like he was discussing the weather. I gripped the kitchen counter to steady myself. The room started spinning. This ranch wasn't just property, it was our family's soul. My husband Robert had inherited it from his father, who built it with his bare hands in 1952. We raised David here, teaching him to ride horses before he could properly walk. Every fence post, every barn board, every acre held memories of love, sweat, and dreams. "You can't sell what isn't yours," I whispered, my voice barely audible. David's laugh was bitter and sharp. "Actually, Mom, I can. Dad put the ranch in my name 5 years ago for tax purposes, remember? Technically, it's been mine all along." The memory hit me like a physical blow. Robert had been so sick then, worried about estate taxes, and wanting to protect our legacy. Our lawyer had suggested transferring ownership to David to save money. Robert trusted our son completely. We both did. "But this is my home," I said, tears streaming down my cheeks. "Where will I live? This ranch is all I have left of your father. You can move to that nice senior living place in Billings. I already looked into it. They have activities and people your age. You'll make friends." He was talking to me like I was a child, not the woman who had raised him, fed him, and sacrificed everything for his education. I sank into my old rocking chair, the one Robert had made for me when I was pregnant with David. My hands shook as I tried to process what was happening. "When?" I managed to ask. "The papers were signed yesterday. The developers want to start clearing the land in March. You have 6 weeks to pack up and get out. Get out of my own home, the place where I'd said goodbye to my husband just 2 years ago, where his ashes were scattered in the meadow behind the barn, where every sunrise brought me closer to his memory." "David, please," I begged. "This ranch means everything to me. It's worth so much more than money." "Mom, you're being dramatic. I got 3.5 million for it. That's more than this old place has ever been worth. I'm keeping 2 million as compensation for managing Dad's affairs all these years. And you'll get the rest. That's plenty to live comfortably. 1.5 million. That's what my life's work, my husband's legacy, my home was worth, to my own son. The ranch that had been in our family for 70 years, reduced to a number in his bank account. But I didn't cry anymore. Something inside me hardened, like steel cooling in winter air. I looked at David, really looked at him, and saw a stranger wearing my son's face. "Get out," I said quietly. "Mom, don't be unreasonable. I'm trying to help you plan for the future. Get out," I screamed, surprising both of us with the force in my voice. "Get out of my house and don't come back until you're ready to fix this mess." David straightened his tie and picked up his briefcase. "I'll give you time to cool down. But the sale is final, Mom. There's nothing to fix." He walked toward the door, then turned back. "I'll call you next week to help you start packing." The door slammed shut, leaving me alone in the kitchen where I'd cooked thousands of meals, where Robert and I had planned our dreams, where David had done his homework at the old oak table. The silence was deafening. I sat there for hours, watching the snow fall through the window. The cattle were huddled together near the barn, waiting for their evening feed. They had no idea their home was about to disappear too. My old border collie, Rusty, pressed his warm body against my legs, somehow sensing my pain. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked through every room of the house, touching the walls, the furniture, the pictures of happier times. In Robert's office, I found his old filing cabinet. Maybe there was something there, some document, that could help me understand how this had happened. I pulled out folder after folder of ranch records, tax documents, veterinary bills, and correspondence with lawyers. Then, at the bottom of the last drawer, I found a manila envelope marked personal, Robert's eyes only. Inside was a letter in Robert's handwriting, dated just 2 months before he died. My hands trembled as I read, Margaret, if you're reading this, I'm gone and something has gone wrong with David. I've been watching our son change over the years, becoming more interested in money than family. I'm worried about what he might do with the ranch after I'm gone. I never actually transferred full ownership to him. The documents he has give him power of attorney and the right to manage the property, but I kept a 51% ownership stake in my name. I hid this information from him because I hoped he would prove me wrong, that he would honor our family's legacy. There's a safe deposit box at First National Bank in Kalispell. The key is taped under the bottom drawer of my desk. Box number. Inside, you'll find the real ownership documents and my will, which leaves everything to you, not David. I also hired a private investigator 2 years ago to monitor David's finances. I suspected he was stealing from my business accounts. The evidence is in the safe deposit box too. I pray you never need to use this information. But if David ever tries to take the ranch from you, know that you have the power to stop him. I love you, my darling. Protect our legacy. Robert, to my heart was pounding so hard. I thought it might burst. Robert had known. He had protected me, even after death. With shaking fingers, I felt under the bottom drawer of his desk until I found the small key taped there. The next morning, despite the heavy snowfall, I drove the 40 miles to Kalispell. The roads were icy and dangerous, but nothing could stop me. At the bank, the manager, Mrs. Peterson, recognized me immediately. Mrs. Anderson, I'm so sorry about what happened to your ranch. The whole town is talking about it. Such a shame to lose such a beautiful piece of Montana history. It's not lost yet, I said firmly, showing her the key. I need to access box 24/7. In that small metal box, I found everything Robert had promised. The real ownership documents showed that I, not David, owned controlling interest in Pine Valley Ranch. Robert's actual will left everything to me, not the fake version David had shown the probate court. And there, in a thick folder, was evidence that David had been embezzling from Robert's business accounts for over 3 years, stealing nearly $200,000. But the most shocking discovery was a recording device. A small digital recorder with a note from Robert. I recorded my conversation with David the day I supposedly signed over the ranch. He forged my signature. The real conversation is on this device. I listened to the recording with tears in my eyes. Robert's weak voice, sick with cancer, asking David to promise to always take care of me and the ranch. David's voice, seeming so sincere, promising to honor his father's wishes. But then, after Robert had fallen asleep from his pain medication, the recording continued. David's voice again, but different, cold and calculating. The old man's finally out of it. Perfect timing to get these papers signed. He'll never know the difference. And by the time he realizes what happened, it'll be too late. My son had forged his dying father's signature and stolen our ranch. I drove straight to the law office of Sarah Williams, the toughest attorney in Northwest Montana. Sarah was about my age, with silver hair and sharp blue eyes that had intimidated many an opposing lawyer. I'd known her since she was a little girl. Her family had the neighboring ranch. Margaret, she said, embracing me warmly. I heard what happened. I'm so sorry. Don't be sorry yet, Sarah. I need your help to fight this. I laid out all the evidence on her conference table. Sarah's expression grew darker as she examined each document. When she finished listening to Robert's recording, she leaned back in her chair and smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a predator who had just found her prey. Margaret, your son has committed several federal crimes: forgery, elder fraud, embezzlement, and possibly tax evasion. We're not just going to get your ranch back. We're going to make sure he pays for what he's done. I don't want to destroy him completely, I said. He's still my son despite everything, but I want my home back. And I want him to understand that actions have consequences. Sarah nodded. Let me make some calls. This is going to be a very interesting week. While Sarah worked on the legal strategy, I drove home to the ranch. The cattle still needed feeding, and the horses needed care. I wasn't going to let them suffer because of David's betrayal. As I threw hay into the feeding troughs, I thought about all the times David had helped me with these same chores when he was young. What had changed him? When had money become more important than family? That evening, David called. Mom, have you started packing yet? I found a really nice apartment in that senior community. It has a view of the mountains. David, I said calmly, I need to ask you something. Do you remember helping me feed the cattle when you were 12 years old? That winter when your father broke his leg? There was silence on the other end of the line. You worked so hard that winter, I continued. You got up before dawn every day, even on school day. You said the animals depended on us, and we could never let them down. Mom, that was a long time ago. Things are different now. Yes, they are different. You're different. The boy who cared about our animals, who understood that this ranch was about more than money. What happened to him? I grew up, Mom. I learned that sentiment doesn't pay bills or secure futures. Dad was living in the past. And so are you. Your father built something beautiful here, David. Something that was supposed to last for generations. And now I'm turning it into something profitable. Dad would understand if he were here. Actually, David, he is here. And he does understand. Better than you think. I hung up the phone and smiled. Tomorrow, Sarah would file the paperwork that would turn David's world upside down. Tonight, I would sleep peacefully in my own bed, in my own home, for the first time in a week. The next morning, I was feeding the chickens when I saw the sheriff's car coming up the long driveway. Deputy Martinez climbed out, his face grim. Behind him was Sarah Williams, and behind her was David's Mercedes, followed by two more police cars. David got out of his car looking confused and angry. What's going on here? Mom, why are there police at our ranch? It's not our ranch, David, I said quietly. It never was. Deputy Martinez stepped forward. David Anderson, you're under arrest for fraud, forgery, and embezzlement. You have the right to remain silent. David's face went white as the handcuffs clicked around his wrists. This is impossible. Mom, tell them this is some kind of mistake. I walked over to my son, this man I had once rocked to sleep in my arms, and looked into his eyes. The only mistake was trusting you with our family's legacy. As they put David in the back of the police car, Sarah explained what would happen next. The sale to the development company would be voided immediately, since David had no legal right to sell the property. The embezzled money would need to be returned, plus interest and penalties. David would likely face several years in prison. The development company is actually relieved, Sarah said. They were having second thoughts about the environmental impact anyway. They're happy to walk away from this mess. Over the next few weeks, the story spread through our small Montana community like wildfire. The local newspaper ran a front-page story. Local woman fights back against son's betrayal, saves historic ranch. People I'd known for decades stopped by to offer support and share their own stories of family betrayal and forgiveness. David's wife, Linda, came to see me a few days after his arrest. She looked exhausted and embarrassed as she sat at my kitchen table, the same table where her husband had delivered his devastating news just 2 weeks earlier. Margaret, I had no idea, she said through tears. David told me the sale was your idea, that you wanted to move to a retirement community. I never would have supported this if I'd known the truth. I poured her a cup of coffee and sat down across from her. Linda, David is still my son, and you're still part of this family. What he did was wrong, but it doesn't erase 30 years of you being like a daughter to me. The house is being foreclosed on, she said quietly. Apparently, David took out huge loans against his business. expecting the ranch money to cover them. Everything's falling apart. I reached across the table and took her hand. You and the grandkids can stay here with me until you figure things out. There's plenty of room, and I could use the company. Linda broke down completely then, sobbing into her coffee cup. How can you be so kind to me after what my husband did to you? Because holding on to anger would only poison my own heart. This ranch has always been about family, Linda. Real family isn't just about blood. It's about people who show up for each other when times get hard. 3 months later, David was sentenced to 4 years in prison. I attended his sentencing hearing, sitting in the front row where he could see me. When the judge asked if I wanted to make a victim impact statement, I stood up slowly. Your Honor, my son betrayed my trust and tried to steal my home. But he's also the little boy I taught to ride horses, who helped me plant our first vegetable garden, who cried in my arms when his goldfish died. I don't want him to be destroyed by this mistake. I want him to learn from it and become the man I know he can be. David's eyes filled with tears as I spoke. For the first time in years, I saw glimpses of the boy he used to be. I've set aside money for his children's education, I continued. And when he gets out of prison, he'll have a job waiting for him on the ranch, if he wants it. Not as the owner, but as my son who needs to remember where he came from and what really matters in life. After the hearing, David's lawyer arranged for us to have a few minutes alone. David looked older, broken, wearing an orange jumpsuit instead of his expensive suits. Mom, I'm so sorry, he whispered. I don't know what happened to me. I got so focused on money and success that I forgot everything you and Dad taught me. I hugged him tightly, this man who had broken my heart, but was still my child. I know, sweetheart, and now you have 4 years to remember who you really are. Can you ever forgive me? I already have, but you need to forgive yourself and do better when you get out. Today, it's been 2 years since that terrible February morning, when David told me he'd sold our ranch. Linda and my grandchildren live with me, in the big house. We've turned part of the property into a community garden, where local families can grow their own vegetables. The barn hosts a farmer's market every Saturday, bringing life and laughter back to our land. I still wake up every morning, grateful to be in my own bed, in my own home, surrounded by the mountains, and memories that define who I am. The cattle still need feeding, the horses still need care, and the land still needs tending. But now I have help from people who understand that this ranch is about more than profit. It's about preserving something beautiful for future generations. David writes me letters from prison. His handwriting looks like it did when he was a boy, careful and sincere. He's been taking courses in sustainable agriculture and business ethics. He talks about wanting to help expand our community programs when he gets out, about teaching his kids the lessons he forgot along the way. Sometimes on quiet evenings, when the sunset paints the mountains gold, I sit on the front porch where Robert and I used to plan our dreams. I can almost hear his voice in the wind, telling me he's proud of how I fought for our legacy. Not just the land and buildings, but the values and love that make this place a home. The ranch will stay in our family now, protected by ironclad legal documents that ensure it can never be sold without the consent of all living family members. Linda's children are learning to ride horses and feed cattle, just like their father did 40 years ago. Maybe they'll make different choices than he did. Maybe they'll remember that some things are worth more than money. People often ask me how I found the strength to fight back when everything seemed hopeless. The answer is simple. Love is stronger than betrayal. Truth is stronger than lies. And home is worth fighting for no matter what the cost. My son tried to steal my ranch, my memories, and my future. But he didn't know that his father had protected me from beyond the grave. That a mother's love can turn into a warrior's determination, and that sometimes the most powerful weapon against greed is simply refusing to give up. Pine Valley Ranch is still here, still beautiful, still home. And every morning when I feed the cattle and watch the sun rise over the mountains, I remember that some betrayals, no matter how deep they cut, can't destroy what's truly meant to last forever. Se essa história te com você, curta, comente, se inscreva no canal e não deixe de assistir as outras histórias que preparamos com o coração para você.